GM everyone, welcome back to another episode of Touch Grass Podcast. Today we have Azeem from Miden. We've been trying to get this booked for so much time. I think we've rescheduled for 5 times, so we've
For
achieved it.
everyone, I have been trying to get this since the fundraise. So that's
Yeah,
the time
So
that we've been.
since the end of April, we've been trying to do this.
Awesome. So, and I think the timing couldn't be more perfect with kind of privacy taking over the timeline and everyone trying to look for different projects in this current narrative that probably will last more than all the previous metas. But yeah, Azeem, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we did this. Just for context to any of the listeners, I woke up 10 minutes before we were supposed to start recording and realized that there was only 10 minutes left. So they gave me an extra few minutes to like brush my teeth and change my clothes. And I was determined after our 5 reschedules that we would get this done today.
Awesome, always. Awesome. Why don't you give you a quick intro about yourself, how you joined Miden, and yeah, your journey in the space.
Sure. I have been involved in crypto for a very long time now. It was back in like 2012. I was applying to medical schools to matriculate in 2013. And I was spending a lot more time on Twitter. I was working at a biotech company and I was working on a tech startup part time. And so I just found what then was just Bitcoin Twitter and, hanging out and reading about, decentralization, the philosophy of money, why, you know, centralized banks were evil, and all these kinds of ideas. And I ran the Boston Marathon in 2013. It was the one that had the bombings. I don't know if you guys are even old enough to remember that. But that week, I decided I didn't want to go to medical school anymore. I quit my biotech job, rescinded offers for med school, and went all in on the tech startup I've been working on, and simultaneously started writing for the Huffington Post as well, which was a big publication at the time. And later in the year, I got approached. I'd moved back to New York in October of 2013 and met the folks who were starting the New York City Bitcoin Center. And they asked if I'd be open to coming to a New Year's party that they were going to host. And based on if I liked it, they wanted to have me do an article about it. Ended up going. It was an eccentric group of folks that really made me think this industry is going nowhere. Basically, there was dudes bidding on Bitcoin for $600 by screaming bids, using QR codes to sell. So, like I said, like a very long time ago. In more recent times, I led BD sales and partnerships at Gitcoin DAO for 2 years. It was a super interesting time in the industry. I was able to do some big deals with UNICEF's crypto fund, with Shell Oil, with the American Cancer Society. I think during my time, we used to raise money for grants rounds on a quarterly basis. I think my work helped distribute what must have been like $15 million over the course of 2 years to a couple thousand project overall across different verticals, from Web3 social, Web3 gaming, Web3 identity, Ethereum infrastructure. Uh, After that, I ended up going to become a co-founder at Morph, which was an EVM L2 that spun out of BitGet. And I spoke to them before the spin out, came on as one of the co-founders, raised capital. We raised 20 million from Dragonfly, Pantera, Spartan, and some others. And honestly, there were just a multitude of reasons it just wasn't working for me. And I wanted to, gracefully bow out. I'd spoken to my investors about, the reasons that I didn't think that this was working. I got their blessings and had started to sort of explore what I wanted to do next. And this will probably go into, Polygon spun out of Miden earlier this year, and I never worked at at Polygon. I knew Sandeep. Because of Gitcoin, I'd worked with the Polygon team on a variety of things because they used to fund grants on a quarterly basis. And one of the VCs and one of the angels for Miden reached out and was like, I've heard that you're exploring what you want to do next, and there's this team that is amazing, and we think that would really be worth a conversation, just because you have like complementary complementary skill sets where ecosystem, brand, community, social, PR, narrative, TGE, all those things are things that they could use support on, but on technical they couldn't be better. And so we spoke for months before I officially joined the project. I was fielding offers from a variety of teams. I really wanted to make sure that I I wasn't taking the easy route out almost. Like, when you get like, the idea of like, hey, $25 million raise, Andreessen Horowitz, 1KX hack on the cap table. Uh, I was like, am I saying yes because A16Z is on this cap table? Or am I saying yes because I really think that I can do this for like a significant period of time? But after months and talking to other projects, I was just like, these guys are amazing. Bobbin and Dominic, Akshat, who works with us, like everyone's so solid. And so ended up joining a couple weeks before the fundraise announcement that we did. It's like April 30th or May 1st or something like that.
That's awesome. And one thing, like this is like totally different experience at a very lower scale. But when I was transitioning out of my last job to join Wormhole, like there was this thesis that I had in my mind. I think there's no better setup to the next conversation than what you said, Azim. The team's one part, but there's a philosophy behind the tech and everything that Miden's building. What was the conviction point for you in terms of, this is what I want to do and I believe in what we're doing at Miden?
Totally. So, having been in this space for a very long time and having been someone who has operated with the most integrity I feel like I could, which has resulted candidly in like me not making a lot of the financial returns that I probably could have. Was I willing to do other things? To me, that's just a super important aspect of things. And, I think that I want to do long-term value creation with people who are looking to do the same. And when I sat with the Miden team, I saw people who they're really long-term incentivized. I mean, even as a personal note, I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about this part, but like the founders don't have a 4-year vest. Employees will have a 4-year vest for tokens. Founders have a 6-year vest. And so, it was even just for us to be able to tell each other, like, we're here for the long haul. And to me, the idea of that, is important. Where, Bobbin was at Meta leading the ZK team. He was at the EF before this. He's a Polygon co-founder. Like, Bobbin took a major pay cut to be able to work on Miden, despite having a big fundraise. He took a big pay cut, and it's because, again, this is an idea he's been working on for years. He really believes in it, and so to me, the humility, hard work, long-term thinking, and they're just like good guys. Like, I think that's something that gets discounted a lot when we talk about where people want to work, but like when you think about having to spend so much time with so many people over the course of multiple years, like I want to like the people I work with.
In
Awesome.
terms of Azim, like sort of branching into that a little bit more, did you have interface with the Miden team before when you
No,
were at previous roles? No.
no.
So like,
I like super candidly, I'd never heard of them. I had known, 2021, 2022, Polygon was doing a bunch of like ZK stuff, ZK EVM, ZK acquisition, Hermes, or whatever it was. Like I saw the announcements, and I knew the Polygon team, but I knew them as far as like, hey, we're gonna do a Gitcoin round for Polygon builders. How much do you guys want to put up?
Yeah. Uh, and going back to like doubling down on the conviction kind of your thesis for Miden was like ZK privacy. Was there that foresight that these are going to be the next kind of big primitives in the space that people aren't paying attention, but eventually they will be the foundation for what the next apps and blockchains will look like? Was that also a play, or was it
Um,
more on the conviction, just the team itself?
Amazing question, and it definitely played into it. What's funny is that most people that I spoke to that I wanted to join Miden said, "Hey, are you sure that you want to join a ZK project? ZK was cool 2 years ago. ZK is not cool anymore." My idea was flipped on that, where I've been writing for CoinDesk and Forbes for a while, and I've done a lot of articles around things that relate to institutional adoption. And even outside of that, when I had done these deals with like Shell and things like that, I ended up meeting folks at Standard Chartered, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Invesco, Franklin Templeton, and I would have conversations with them about all these things. And I sort of put this thesis together where I said, the last Now it's been longer, but like, at the time when I was joining, that the past year, everyone was just screaming, the institutions are coming, the institutions are coming. And so I had conversations with a bunch of institutional people, and I asked them, what are the things that are actually holding you back from coming on chain? And one of the answers that came up the most was privacy. Every hedge fund I spoke to, every private equity fund I spoke to, many of the large asset managers, they said there's no way that they're going to be able to do things on public ledgers. And so, granted, it's only been a few months since I took the bet, but the bet was that ZK has to become cool again. Otherwise, institutions will not come on board.
Yeah. Now that we got like the bit of history and background, what is Miden? What is an edge blockchain?
Yeah.
People usually say that we are the third generation blockchain, fourth generation blockchain. So it's very confusing to a lot of people who are very new to crypto and are
Yeah.
discovering it. But what is Miden in the simplest way?
Miden is a non-EVM, completely new blockchain written from the ground up. And what an edge blockchain just means is that traditionally, when you're using the blockchain, you take a transaction and then you send it to the network to do the computation. And then it settles the computation after it's done and like adds a block, and then, it's added to the blockchain. The way Miden works is that you do things at the edge, so to speak, which is on your local device. So on your cell phone or on your computer, you would generate a ZK proof, and the computation gets done using the power of your device. And then you take the ZK proof and you send it to the network, and the ZK proof gets verified as real, and then that gets added. And so because of this, you're able to store and keep sensitive data local because you're only sending the ZK proof, and the only thing that's needed is that ZK proof. So it allows for making it faster, and keep things more scalable in that way, and
Yeah.
also offers privacy. And then, in a sense, though I couldn't technically explain, we were able to do compliance as well there.
100%. I think like one of the interesting things is you guys enable privacy, and that in turn makes scalability much easier for mine, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is another one of those things where going Miden's interesting because you can do public and private transactions. Like you can choose to have a public transaction if you want, but technically speaking, the public transaction will be slower because you would send the computation to the network to do, which is just a less efficient process. And so the idea of privacy is baked into like actually the easier UI UX when you're using Miden, which is interesting. Even when I thought about that, I was like, wait, like that's actually an awesome approach, but it still gives users the ability to do both if they would like.
100%. All right, I think is we can finally talk about privacy. You know what's happening. We have like merge shilling Zcash for months right now, and
Yeah.
on time, and a lot of people are really interested about it. And I kind of saw this like being the next big primitive in the space. We kind of exhausted all the foundational kind of core principles of crypto. And I think we're going back to basics, where
Hmm.
all these methods are exhausted and we want to go back to basics. Like the cypherpunk era, people want to remember that again.
Yeah.
Why do you think like it has taken so much time for privacy to kind of catch on? And even though it's been here, so many interesting projects are kind of building in the space. But why do you think it has taken so much time? And is it here to stay?
I think at least my take on it is, it was what, 2024 when the first January 2024, I think, when the first Bitcoin ETFs got approved. That was what sort of like started what we could call the initial bull run last year. And my take on it had sort of just been that the institutions coming meant that they wanted to start playing around on chain, and ETFs or ETPs, whichever word that people use, to me are really just, hey, I want access to crypto, but I don't want to buy it myself. And so I'm going to give you money, and then you're going to buy Bitcoin with it, or you'll buy, Solana one's got approved this week. You'll buy Solana with it. And there's mostly been uh, institutions coming on board to do the absolute simplest of things, where like they'll buy and hold an asset for you in a way where even though you could buy and hold the asset yourself, right? And then we've seen things get more interesting, still from an asset holding perspective or an asset purchasing, with these digital asset treasuries, where you raise a bunch of money in the market and then you use that as what should be synergistically approached to like purchase tokens to keep token prices afloat. And um, whether that's working or not is a different conversation. But I think that the idea of these institutions, they all move extremely slowly. I think crypto doesn't understand just how fast that it moves. And just to get approvals when you're working at some of these organizations to do any of these things, the laws, everything around it, takes forever. And so I think it just made sense that like privacy had to come back if institutions came on board January 2024 and they haven't still meaningfully come on chain. That if they want to, and they realize like, hey, we want to put we want to put $1 billion, we want to put 3 billion, 5 billion on chain. Uh, Morgan Stanley doesn't have their assets in a public. You have no idea how much they have, or where they hold it, or what moves they make, or if they're paying their contractors. And so, to me, I think it's just a natural evolution of you know understanding that in traditional finance that you do have privacy enabled. And so now they're like, oh, if we want to do some more interesting stuff, clubs are interesting, lending markets are interesting, but we don't want to do this on a public ledger. We don't do this publicly on our traditional, rails. Why would we do this publicly on these new rails? And there are so many like drawbacks to doing it on public ledgers when everyone can see everything. And so I think it just, because of the institutions actually trying to get more sophisticated on what they would like to be able to do on chain, because they see, all of these really cool things happening, and then they get to the table and then they've been like, but we can't do this privately. That doesn't work for us, And so I really think it's honestly just been as simple as that.
That makes sense. And one thing that I've noticed now that institutions are getting more involved, everything that you said, Azim, in terms of them wanting privacy, has made the conversation a lot easier. Would you
Yep.
say a year ago or before the institutions started getting in, like we always say, for blockchain adoption to grow, regulation is a big part of it. Would you say privacy is like a more niche of that, where the regulation aspect or everything that's happened in the past, people are really afraid to interact with privacy related tech?
So for the most part, we've only seen privacy used when it comes to like doing, at least the way it's shown, as illegal activities. And with institutions needing to come on board, they need there to be privacy. And then at the same time, they need those regulations as well. And so I still think it's going to take time, because the regulations still need to be able to pass. Like, Miden's doing this idea of compliant privacy. And every room that I go into, I have to say, hey, I'm telling you the word compliant before the word privacy, because I need you to understand that we know that it's important to follow all of the laws and regulations as opposed to just offering privacy. Because if you think about it right now, privacy is for the most part most known around like North Korea, and the idea of the Lazarus group going around and stealing money, like the billion plus that they stole from Bybit. And then us finding out that within 24 hours that money has now sort of been somehow funneled back into an antagonistic nuclear program of a country that is not friendly with the United States. And so privacy is associated with that, which is very scary to think about, right? And now we're looking at like, well, how do you do this in a way that's compliant? I met with Commissioner Hester Peirce of the SEC twice now in the last, I don't know, month and a half. And we were chatting about exactly this. Like, she's a privacy maxi, but we also understand that things need to be done in a way that are legal.
100%. Now that we like Miden is kind of privacy first, not just some feature that's part of it. What are some things you are interested in seeing on the chain in terms of apps? I know that the ecosystem is growing rapidly, and there's some pretty cool things live. And uh, what are some things you want to see on the Miden blockchain that kind of have this privacy principles and ZK proving and stuff?
Super simple one, dark pools. the idea of being able to do trading in a private manner and being able to have all of the right pairs and just like that's something that I think is going to be huge. Collabs has been one that people have talked about. I think that could be interesting. Private payments, to be really honest with you, I've been paid in crypto for many years now, and it's always on some sort of public network, and I'm usually Ethereum, and figuring out burner wallet addresses that I need to figure out to be able to do that, and then figure out how to like do my like there's just like so much that comes with it where it's like we almost don't think about it. But when I was at Morph, we used to pay everyone in crypto. The idea that you could look at everyone's salary as it was paid out from the accounts, and then you could click a little bit further and figure out what someone's net worth was, and if they went to Chipotle with it, just doesn't make sense. Private OTC, something I'm sort of really interested by. We'll see if it works. We're doing a lot of discovery to see what are the kinds of things that are valuable to a lot of these institutions. Compliant mixer, something I'm super interested in. We've seen mixers and we'll probably have to word it differently when it comes out, but mixers have been seen as traditionally evil, but I don't think that they should be. And where compliant mixers come in to me to be interesting is that you can use it as a privacy as a service for public chains. So if you can say that you can use the Miden compliant mixer if you're on Solana, if you're on Base, if you're on Arbitrum, and to be able to come over, still use the public chains that you're accustomed to using, but use an application that allows for simple bridging and mixing, and then allows you to get your funds back. I think there's something really interesting to be said there. One of the things I've been exploring how we could potentially have an edge is private prediction markets. We've seen so much of public prediction markets to date, and I think there has started to be some conversations around how much public prediction markets can actually be swayed. Particularly, I've seen a lot more conversation around this with the Zoran Mamdani election in New York City and how the poly market things are looking, and people debating about how much can these things be swayed if you know how much money is in there and all of that. So I'm super curious to see what that looks like if you can turn it into a private prediction market, and like what that
Yeah.
would be. Yeah.
Also, I think like I follow the whole, even though I don't participate as much, I just like the mention markets a little during these
Mhm.
pressers and stuff like that. So they're interesting for me. But I think when everything is so transparent, it just moves markets because people are tracking these wallets, they're tracking different profiles. And when all of that is private, I think the odds and how these markets function and
Mhm.
the rewards to risk for different markets can change a lot. So it'll be super interesting how adding.
I think it'll make if you have privacy enabled markets, it'll make the market more competitive,
Yeah.
and all these in like it's not going to benefit insiders as much as it does right now. Like I
Yeah.
think having a private OTC setup would be interesting. Azeem, I want to take that a step further. I think having Roico or Boico,
Mhm.
that implementation on like a private blockchain would also be interesting. I think
Mm.
it would change how market makers function as well in terms
Yeah.
of how they operate.
It's been interesting, actually. Some of the main discovery work that we've been doing have actually been with market makers, because I'm looking at Miden way more as a chain that's going to be able to serve, as we said, institutional adoption. In the short to medium term, though, I've been trying to really understand how is this valuable for OTC desks, for liquid funds, and for market makers in particular, about are there products that you would love to be able to have built on a private network that if they have liquidity and usability, that could actually be lucrative for you to use. And so you of course need to be able to have retail flows in places that make the institutions want to be able to come on chain. But there's a lot of things that these market makers who are playing with such massive amounts of money, that if there are things that could be lucrative to them, that Miden opens a new design space to be able to do things that haven't yet been possible. And it's been really interesting. We haven't come to what those will exactly be, but we're getting really close. This week I met with 5 market makers, and it's not because our token is coming out immediately, right? It's because we're doing these discovery calls, getting to know them, understanding their businesses, and seeing how we can explain what Miden does to them.
Yeah, and KG,
100%.
for your context, like all of these market makers are really competitive with each other, so they
Hmm.
they don't want anyone to know anything. But it comes back to your point. Like one thing that I was explaining to my dad the entire blockchain stuff, and his main takeaway was, thank God, your salary is not on chain. I don't want your uncle figuring that out. Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff that a Desi dad is thinking
Mm-hmm.
about. So future like privacy enabled payments also super interesting. Azeem,
Mm-hmm.
is there like a use case that you've thought of or the team's thought of that you haven't found the builder for? Like this is like the most abstract idea on Miden. We just love the team to come and build this.
I think the private prediction market is the one that I'm super interested by. And the reason is that I'm in the middle of trying to court what would be massive in terms of a partnership for distribution and licensing that would allow us to do this in a way that could generate some real massive success. And I still need to close uh, that deal. But if and once that deal is closed and I can publicly talk about that deal, I do think that then it's going to be trying to figure out, you know, who's going to be able to be brought in to build this because uh, that alone, like I think like we'll be able to raise a ton of money against it. Like I want to build an MVP for it and then raise money against it and then be able to put a team in place that's going to be able to lead it. Until then, it would probably be me who leads a lot of those things. And so that is one of the things I'm really excited by. It's also one that I understand more, if I'm really honest with you, right? Some of these things, like I'm a non-technical co-founder, and some of these things are quite technical or super financial in nature, neither of which I like deeply, deeply have. But understanding something like that and understanding, how we could bring sports leagues or music or fashion or things like that on chain in a way that could be cool, that I understand really well.
So if I kind of sum it up, let's say for Solana, it is internet capital markets. That's like the tagline they're going for.
Hmm.
So for Miden, is it private capital markets?
Yeah, private capital markets. That would honestly be it. Yeah. We've been playing with the wording. Is it institutional capital? Is it, like what are the word that we go? But private capital markets is absolutely actually it. I think Akshat was talking about this literally last week.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. Before we wrap it up, I think we're close. We have two more questions.
Sure.
What's next for Miden in Q4 and beyond? You know that you see that the token is not going to go live anytime soon, but what's next
No.
in terms of product that you're so excited for Q4 and something the community should know about?
So candidly, like, we have, I think we'll be ready to go to mainnet, like, end of Q1, let's say. And these are like very transparent convos. Like normally, I don't know if founder would do this, but like we have to sort of think through like Series A plus TGE, ICO plus TGE, just TGE. And then there's also the idea of like mainnet and delayed TGE. And there's pros and cons to each one and how we want to go about being able to sort of approach those is right now is like very actively thinking through it all, right? Is it's extremely competitive markets right now. Monad and Mega ETH have both been absolutely killing it. The venture market has gone to an interesting place where being able to convince them of like, just investing in another like Mega ETH, another Monad or Bera style massive round is not necessarily exciting. I think like right now, Story might be the only one that's like operating at like a high FDV from these infra launches, and then attention has gotten much more competitive in terms of being able to get it. Access to builders is much more competitive. And so right now, a lot of the thought process is in really figuring out what is going to be the best game plan for us. Because it's interesting, like as soon as we announced, and it's something I've been considering talking about more publicly. We see like, everyone like writes these like TGE Bibles. I've been thinking about doing like a TGE journal because there's so much that comes with launching a token that most people don't understand and never get a chance to learn. Like we know market makers exist. What do they actually do? What are the competitive advantages of one against the other? How do you decide what's a good deal or not? We saw CJ recently from Limitless talking about the Binance stuff. And for better or for worse, the real question there is that there's negotiations to be had with centralized exchanges when you want to launch a token. And the way that you're able to sequence getting on exchanges allows you to have leverage. What funds that you have gives you leverage. And so not everyone gets the same deal. And then understanding the different markets that you want to be able to get exchanges from. There's North American exchanges like Coinbase, Gemini, and Kraken. There's Asian exchanges like Binance, OK, and Bybit. And then there's Korean exchanges that are like the subset with Upbit and Bithumb. And so like thinking through all of these things, like what is going to be the best way for us to take the time that we have between now and when we'd be able to go to mainnet, and what's going to allow us to create the most success. And so candidly, a lot of it is just a lot of sit downs with people that are smarter than me, and then taking that information and trying to see how we can turn it into what turns into what next steps should be.
I think this cycle has been really interesting because there's just so much you can do, and there's not one playbook, and there's just so many different case studies in terms of what you can look at and reference off. Azeem, my last question. I think this is really builder focused because a lot of our listeners are core builders that want to build cool stuff. Obviously, with every other ecosystem, you can say you can just fork it, right? Like
Yeah.
with Biden, you can sort of just fork it and add privacy to it. It's like a new thing. How would you, is there any advice for any builder who wants to think about a net new idea that they could do with privacy tech? And how would they sort of go through thinking about that? Is there like any mentor model you share with founders or any advice you share with founders?
I tell them to just get in touch with our team. It's interesting. Our technical team is so insanely good that, a DevRel at our project would basically be able to be a senior protocol engineer at other places. And a senior protocol engineer with us could probably be a CTE, a CTO in most places. And so the biggest thing that I would say to anyone, and Dominic is the one who works most closely with our pioneers, as well as one of our co-founders who's deeply, deeply product focused. We're really easy to get in touch with on a monthly basis. We're accepting applications for new pioneers. We're extremely selective on like how we're going about being opinionated on what we want built on top of Miden. So we're not discouraging from people from building on Miden, but we're being specific as to what we think is going to create the initial pieces of success. But we've made it very easy to get in touch so that we can have conversations about it. And, for anyone listening, like my Telegram handle is the same as my Twitter handle. It's just Azeem K, Azeemk. Hit me up. And like, if you don't know who to get in touch with, tell me what you're thinking, and I will just put you in touch with the right people to chat with over there.
Awesome. Hope we see like a big Miden mafia soon. And
Me too. Me
Rachit,
too.
one of his classic graphics.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was awesome. I'm big proponent for privacy. I wanted to succeed a lot, and I think it was Mert who said it. If privacy fails and crypto succeeds, crypto fails, or something like that.
100%. 100%.
So I want to see more privacy projects kind of take over. So, and yeah, this was awesome, and thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure to be here. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this.
We will
And then,
do more of these
yes.
as more ecosystem projects come up, as you get closer to mainnet. We'll definitely do a lot more of these. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, get well soon.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
All right, cheers.